Good afternoon, everyone signed in today. I welcome you all for the Study New Zealand webinar exclusively conducted by SIEC. Today's webinar will give you an insight to why New Zealand as a study destination for your career. On the panel today, we have Ms. Sonia Singh, the pioneer in setting standards for student recruitment in India. Her career graph and expertise is of more than 20 years. Spent many years nurturing talent within SIEC and traveled widely across the globe. Ms. Sonia Singh is the founder and managing director of SIEC. The visionary has been a source of innovation and a guiding light at all times. She has recently been approached to be on panel of Larsen and Toubro. Mr. Ashutosh Joshi, director of SIEC, is an international alumni and would be sharing practical life experiences of an Indian student overseas. Ms. Anubhuti Rothela, COO of SIEC, she has been with the industry for almost 20 years, having been part of the New Zealand culture and life. Ms. Nidhi Vich, General Manager, has an experience of more than 10 years in mentoring and designing students' careers. She's among the most sought-for advisors for New Zealand in Northern India. Ms. Himanshi, New Zealand country expert, will be handling all your queries. I, Dr. Shreya Batra, country manager, would be your host for today afternoon. The next 40 minutes will be very important in helping you shaping your decision for the future. Please do not hesitate to ask questions. In case we are not able to answer them during the webinar, we will surely get back to you post the same. What all would we be covering in the webinar? The webinar content for today would be an overview of New Zealand education system, current market dynamics, emerging sectors and skill shortages, scale of arriving opportunities, pathway and other opportunities to capitalize, why international students choose New Zealand as an international destination. The next slide would show you New Zealand as a country. Could you please shift to the next slide? So New Zealand is the youngest country in the world with a total population of around 4.5 million people in totality. There are two islands in New Zealand. One is the North Island and the other is the South Island. That is what constitutes New Zealand. The education system that New Zealand follows is of the UK or the Scotland system. The duration of degrees, that is graduation degrees, are of 3 years, typically just like India, and the engineering for 4 years. Could you please change the next slide? The New Zealand education system. New Zealand has a level-wise education from level 3 to level 10. Institutes are NZQA approved, that means New Zealand Quality Assessment approved. The type of institutes that we have government polytechnics, we have universities and private education providers. Out of 8, 7 universities in the world are ranked among the top 500. Anubhuti, there is a question over here which says, we have a student Indu who's asking, if you have to give a comparative overview of India and New Zealand education system, how would you do that?
Hi everyone. So to answer the question, the education system which is followed in New Zealand is very similar to UK and Scottish system, which is also followed in India. So it means that the courses, after your year 12, you do bachelor's degree, which is a 3-year degree, except if you are going for engineering, which is 4 years, and architecture and medicine would be different as well, but the bachelor's degree generally would be 3 years, and The master's degree would be for 2 years, very similar to India and the similar to India. So it is easy for the students to go for studies after soon after their bachelor's degree as well, and they don't really have to look for a 16 year of education. So it is a 15-year of college education that they follow.
I know they even want to know that what is so good about New Zealand education and training compared to other countries.
All right. So I think the very good thing about New Zealand education and training is that all the courses would make you job ready. The courses would have, all the contents which will make you a skilled person in a particular stream. So even if you are doing a bachelor's degree, you would be doing a specialized qualification. So if you do a bachelor's of business, you would actually be specialist in a particular segment of business, which could be accounting or finance or marketing. So after completing your bachelor's degree, you don't have to go for another master's to make yourself job ready. So after completion of your bachelor's degree, you can do that straight away. Same thing goes with their bachelor degree programs also, which are being offered. So sorry, the diploma programs which are being offered. So there are a lot of courses which you can do if you don't want to go for a 3 years or a 4 years bachelor's degree. For example, a diploma in commercial cookery or a diploma in engineering technician, these kind of programs. So they are very much skilled oriented, and they really make sure that you are able to get job without having to do another program to make yourself job ready.
And hi, this is Sonia, and I would just want to add to what Anu is saying, is that unlike the Indian degree programs, which are very theoretical, all New Zealand diplomas, the advanced diplomas and the bachelor degree programs, require internships as part of their program. So there could be a 3 month to a 6 month internship inbuilt within a bachelor's degree or an advanced diploma, where students would be actually working with uh, companies in real time. The universities or institutes arrange for those internships. And because you are given post-study work rights, because you've got a foot in the door, if you really perform very well, then that leads to full-time job opportunities. So that's a huge shift from what is done in India at the bachelor's degree level. And the other fact to remember is that normally in India, when you do a bachelor's degree, in order to get into the job market, you've got to do a master's. Whereas if you study in New Zealand, you get into the job market straight after a bachelor's. So compared to a 23 or a 24-year-old student getting into the job market, you get into the job market at the age of 20 or 21, so you start early. And a master's is done only after you gain work experience in order to get promotions or in order to get uh, further advancement in your career rather than getting a job. So that's the biggest difference between studying in India and studying in New Zealand.
Thank you, ma'am. We would even like to show the fact that the 8 universities that are there in New Zealand, out of which the 7 universities that cross the top 500 line. University of Auckland is at 92, University of Otago at 159, University of Canterbury 242, with Messi and Lincoln just crossing close to 500. So this in itself talks volumes on the quality of education that New Zealand institutes impart. Changing on to the next slide, we come to the entry requirements. Himanshi, would you please be able to answer? There is a girl asking that she's in class 11th and wishes to know what kind of percentage would she need to get into the best New Zealand university. As recently in Delhi University, 100.75 is the cutoff that has come. Himanshi, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. See, as New Zealand has three education providers, we have universities, government polytechnics, and private training education providers. So, starting with the universities, 75% and 80% is the minimum requirement that the student requires to qualify. Less than say about 60-65% if they get in class 12, they can easily go for government polytechnics as well as into the private training education providers. However, there are universities like University of Canterbury and University of Auckland which have the foundation level program. So say if student is getting around 65-70, they can go into the university as well.
Sahil
Having
wants to.
said, sorry, but having said that, please do not assume that since the entry requirements are at 75 to 80%, that the quality of the courses at the university is lesser than Delhi University or Bombay University. The marking system in school leaving programs at New Zealand and in other countries is entirely different to the marking system we have in India. So nobody in New Zealand would have heard of 1.75, more than 100% marks. So you've got to have a relative idea that the marking system in high schools in India is completely different. And that is why the universities set a realistic cutoff percentage of 75 to 80% onwards.
Thank you, ma'am. Nidhi, Sahil wants to know if he does his masters in New Zealand, can he, at later stages, work in USA or UK? And could he drop a year or so and then resume going back to studying? Nidhi, uh, I believe that there's some technical issue. I would repeat, Nidhi, are you there? Anu, could you take up this question, please? Sahil, a student, wants to know if he does his masters in New Zealand, can he, at later stages, work in USA or UK? Can he drop a year or so and then resume going back to studying?
Can you just repeat the question, Shreya? I
Surely
think
I
I
can,
missed. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure. Sahil wants to know if he does his masters in New Zealand, can he, at later stages, work in USA or UK? Can he drop a year or so and then resume going back to study?
Yep, sure. Because the New Zealand education qualifications are globally recognized, so the students have the liberty of going and working anywhere in the world for that matter, not just UK or USA, and they can actually drop a year as well and come back to studies. That's not an issue at all. Because for example, if a student goes for the master's qualification and the first year of the master's is called PG diploma in that particular area, and if the student gets a job in between, he can actually exit after a year, pursue his work experience, come back, and then he can actually complete his master's degree as well. So he can pretty much work anywhere in the world, or not just UK and US.
Anu, I believe Sahil wants to take a year off, as in he wants to go and do some traveling and he would not be working. So, would that be advisable in such a situation? One.
Hmm.
Uh, and second, he wants to know the fact that New Zealand is a sister country to 45 countries. So, I believe
Hmm.
there are a lot of advantages if he studies from New Zealand and is
Yeah.
able to, yeah,
Yeah, what happens is that if you have that is, it is sister country to about 45 countries, but that is once you have the New Zealand passport.
right,
So
true
if
that.
you have studied, yeah, so if you study in New Zealand, and because of the New Zealand, it's a very young country, as you mentioned in one of your slides. So, and they require a lot of skilled people in the country. So, what happens is many students, after completion of the program, they can actually apply for 1 year of post-study work visa. It is now called as post-study work visa, which is for 1 year, and then they can gain some experience there. They can even apply for residency if they wish to do that. And once they have a New Zealand passport, they can actually go to many countries, about 45 countries, without having a visa in hand. However, the length of their stay on for which they can stay in that country without having a visa is different from, it can be from anything to begin with about a week to about 3 months to 6 months as well. But that happens only once you have a New Zealand passport.
All right. There's another
Yeah.
question. Himanshi, would you please take it up? Could student get credit from 2 years diploma course to get entry on bachelor's program? Or students have to study 3 years bachelor's even though they have 2 years New Zealand diploma? It's a question by Nabaraj Khatri. Himanshi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shreya. See, if a student in class 12th is not meeting the direct entry requirement of a bachelor degree in New Zealand, then he can also go for a diploma, which will lead him to a degree in New Zealand. As we recently have done the application of one of the applicant who has not got the admission for the direct degree, but Fitiria institution has given him the offer for 2 years of diploma.
The question is that the students have to study 3 years bachelor's even though they have a 2 years New Zealand diploma, or there would be credit transfers. There are credit transfers if they've done a 2 years diploma and then it automatically leads to a bachelor's. So they don't have to do a 2 years diploma and then do a 3 years. So it's not going to become a 5 year course program. It's going to remain as a 3 year course program. And Nabaraj, the fact that every course in every institute has its own specifications, so more or less, mostly this happens, but it's not a blanket rule. But majorly, that is the whole idea of having a level-wise education. I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next question, Himanshi, which is the entrance test that is to be given for applying to colleges in New Zealand for admission?
Right. See, in New Zealand, there is only one entry examination, that is the student has to fulfill English language test, which is IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE. However, certain ITPs and private training education providers accept PTE. Universities can recommend PTE as an English examination in few of the programs. So as such, IELTS and TOEFL is recommended by all the education providers in New Zealand. It's only few of the programs in universities, for example, like Master of Engineering Management, wherein many universities require GMAT. But these are exceptional programs in which the minimum requirement of GMAT could be 500, 550. Otherwise, it's only the English requirement.
Yes, so Mr. Karan, the whole idea of getting admission in New Zealand is based on academic documents, that is your percentiles, and an English proficiency test. Depending on what institute you're going to, the test would be designed. Mostly IELTS is acceptable universally. Nidhi, Mr. Ashok has heard that LOI provided by an institute can exempt the IELTS exam. Nidhi, Anu, can you please take up this question? I'll just repeat the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ashok has heard that the LOI provided by an institute can exempt the IELTS exam.
Yes, actually, this was true, or rather, it would be true till the 5th of October. But from the 6th of October, the INC, that is Immigration New Zealand guidelines, are changing, and according to which student has to appear for one of the tests that Himanshi mentioned. So
Right.
LOI, or like any internal examination taken by the institutes will not be acceptable post 6th of October.
Right. LOI basically means for the rest of them that the letter of instruction, basically, which tells you the fact that the student has been studying throughout in English and he is well versed with the language. I know there's another question by Mrs. Rawat. She's a career counselor in one of the leading schools. She would like to seek
Okay.
information on entry requirement for diploma,
Mhm.
bachelor's, and master's program because as a student counselor, she needs help in guiding them.
Sure. See, the diploma programs entry requirements are generally would start from anything between 50 to 55% in year 12. A lot of students can actually go for diplomas after having done a bachelor's degree as well. So, for example, a student who's done a bachelor of arts and he doesn't have a professional qualification to start the job. So he can also go for a diploma in a specialized area if he wishes to go for. Then the next course is bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree entry requirement would be anything starting from 75% onwards, depending on university to university. Having said that, as it was touched before also, a student who does not meet the direct entry requirement can go through the diploma pathway, and he would not have to spend extra time. He would still be able to get the degree in the, the 3 to 4 years of time frame. The third course is master's degrees. Now, if you are talking about masters in a business or a specialized master's degree for that matter, in New Zealand universities require student to have a bachelor's degree in the same area, which means if you want to go for masters of accounting, you must have a bachelor's in accounting.
Right.
And if you do not have that, you can go for a graduate diploma, which is a 1 year program, and it is recognized for jobs as well as if you want to get into the master's degree later on.
So,
And yeah, you had a question, Shreya?
so graduate diploma would be a university accepted qualification if they want to
Yes.
tomorrow go and come back to India, or they want to go to Canada or anywhere. It is an
Uh,
accepted qualification.
it is a program which is it is an award program, like how we call it. So which means that it is recognized as a qualification. It is not a non-award program that if you do the course, it will not really give you any benefit in the job or in higher admission into master's level programs. So it is pretty much recognized, and the good thing is that graduate diploma, after you complete the course, you can still apply for the post-study work visa or jobs and all those things. So that's possible. And to apply for Masters of Engineering Management or Masters of Management or Master MBA, you have sorry, not engineering management, but to apply for Masters of Management or Masters of Business Administration, you could come from any background. So then you don't really, because it's not a specialized qualification, it is a qualification which is meant for people from different walks of life.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So they're very competitive.
very competitive. Yeah,
So moving on to the next slide of major sectors that we see in the economy of New Zealand. Can we please change the slide? The major sectors that we see at the moment in New Zealand and which are upcoming and growing, one is technology and communication. The New Zealand's fastest growing sector, contributing nearly 20 billion to the economy and employing more than 60,000 people. Research and development, witnessing substantial growth with high-tech companies spending an average of 8% of their revenues on R&D. The kind of research and development that happens is like University of Auckland along with University of Manchester are researching for treatment of diabetes. Otago University has identified the stem cells for tongue cancer. So that is the kind of level of research that happens in New Zealand. So they are very research oriented. And the fact that they promote research so much is very, very visible by the fact that all PhD students are charged domestic fees of about 4,000 New Zealand dollars, and it is substantially economical. The education of the children of PhD students is also funded by the New Zealand government. High and medium tech manufacturing industries. These include wood, paper, food and beverages, chemical and refining, media and telecommunications, logistics, health, education, and professional and technical services. Higher education, it's a growing country. New Zealand government is investing heavily in the education sector with the projections of international enrollments increase by 2025 to more than double of what they are today. New Zealand government invests about 8% of its GDP in education, which is actually I think one of the highest among all across the globe. IT sector, over 60% of New Zealand GDP is contributed, growing exponentially in the IT sector. So, ma'am, I'd like to put across a question to you asked by Chandan. What all sectors are booming in New Zealand for somebody to think of a career in New Zealand?
And it is a growing economy. So, from personal experience, and because we've visited New Zealand very often, they have a huge demand for engineers in New Zealand at this point of time. There are IT experts that they require. It is a huge tourism destination, so there are opportunities in the area of tourism, hospitality, and being one of the largest exporters of dairy. Dairy farming is another area that a number of students find employment in. So you've got to understand from a young person's point of view, that there are some people who are not academically inclined. They do not want to sit in classrooms and do degrees because they see themselves as doing vocational work. Having said that, it is not, I mean, unlike India, where we think that vocational qualifications are lower end of the spectrum, globally and internationally, in countries like New Zealand, Australia, or anywhere in the world, vocational education is considered to be a hands down practical education which leads to work. And the imparting of education is also very practical, so that as soon as students finish their 2 years advanced diplomas, they're employable. And there's an industry out there who's employing them. A typical diploma graduate would start at a starting salary of about 35 to 40,000 New Zealand dollars a year. Compare that to an engineering student. If you are going for a bachelor's degree to New Zealand, first of all, you've got to, any degree, not bachelor's, but any business degree, bachelor's of engineering, bachelor's of IT, you've got to understand that the study standards are very, very different to India. Those degrees are very intense degrees. Students who try to do part-time jobs and study at the same time have difficulty getting the scores that are required to pass those degrees at the level that leads to work. So all these are realities. In terms of opportunities, opportunities are there in every sector in New Zealand, so long as you are a good student, you are dedicated, you know what you're doing, and while you are studying, you are networking with the industry and with other New Zealanders. So uh, it answers the question in a broader
Yes.
spectrum, that if you are a hospitality specialist, a tourism specialist, somebody in dairy farming, somebody who's doing IT, engineering, accounting, there's an opportunity for everyone. But it is individualistic. It's not a guarantee that every student who graduates finds a job, but students who want to find a job, find a job. The ones who work at themselves find a job. So I
Right.
hope that answers the
So,
question.
yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, Anu, there is a question for you. Karun is a civil engineer. He wants to know what are his career prospects in New Zealand and what course should he do post his bachelor's.
Okay, now Karan being a civil engineer, there are a lot of opportunities for civil engineers in New Zealand, especially if you have heard about South Island, where Christchurch, which was a center of an earthquake a few years back, and which was quite a big disaster, but at the same time it actually gave a lot of opportunity of to the country to build a new city which is earthquake resistant and all that. So there are huge you can say opportunities for civil engineers. Now depending on what Karan wants to do, he has an option of doing various specializations in the master's degree. So he can actually go for a master's in civil engineering, and he can just do a generic civil engineering qualification. He can get into opting for a specialization in structural engineering or environmental engineering or water engineering, geotechnical engineering,
transportation engineering, site engineering, he can go for project management, and he can also go for surveying. So all these programs have huge demand in New Zealand. So all these options are available at the master's level that he can go for.
So thank you, Anu. And Karan, we have 24 offices across India and 32 across the globe, including a lot of B-town and Tier 2 cities. So you could come at any of our office and have a little chat with our career advisor who are experts and was very specifically trained. There are a lot of questions coming up, but as there is a little shortage of time, in case we're not able to attend questions right now, we'll surely come back to you. So I would take up some questions after the next few slides. Moving on to the next slide, New Zealand skills shortage list. As we've already discussed that engineering, agriculture, and forestry, it's an aging population. New Zealand has an aging population, so health and social services, construction, a lot of building work is happening. So they're falling short of project managers, builders, quantity surveyors, electronics and communication. Every country has growing opportunities. It is a key area in New Zealand. Recreation, hospitality, and tourism, as ma'am just talked about. These are the major skill shortage list areas where students go and they are able to find themselves jobs. Ma'am, there's a question from Mona from Mumbai who wants to know she has been working in marketing field and has about 7 years of work experience. And Dhaval, her husband, is from the finance. He has
Mhm.
been working with close to 8 years of experience. They wish to go together for studying further. Is that a possibility that they both go in the same flight and self sustain themselves in New Zealand?
Okay, the first of all, they can go together because there are certain levels of courses that allow both husband and wife to go together, where the spouse visa can be applied along with the student visa. And these are all courses that start from level 8, I think, which are all postgraduate diploma and master levels of courses. When you go for that level of course, one person can study and the other person can work. Having said that, it's an expensive country. Studying is expensive, and part-time jobs or jobs that you find in the first few months are not the greatest jobs. I mean, because there is no local experience, and most of New Zealanders look for local experience. You are looking at a remuneration of about not more than about $15 an hour. So it is important to get your finances in order, and you should have at least your tuition fee completely covered before you leave India. If you have that, then the stresses of moving to a new country and having to study is not so much. So when you've got so much of work experience, you've got a certain lifestyle in India, do not expect that things are going to be easy as soon as you land in New Zealand. But if you're well prepared, if your finances are covered, if you've got your tuition fee covered, one person is working, the other person is studying, it is a possibility, and a number of students have done that and made a good life for themselves there.
So I believe, Mona, your question has been answered. There's another question by Milind. What kind of part-time job opportunities are available? So I believe briefly it's been answered. If you would like to add something else, ma'am.
Well, part-time jobs that are available could be in the hospitality sector, in terms of becoming a waiter in a restaurant. You could be working in the kitchens, and you could be driving a taxi. You could be working in a 7-Eleven, in a departmental store. So part-time jobs are basically unskilled labor, and that is what is available to most of the students when they land at New Zealand. So they're
Right.
not, a lot of people assume that just because I've got qualifications in IT or I'm a qualified engineer and I've got work experience, that I'll walk into a part-time job. It doesn't work like that. In the beginning, you've got to pick up whatever is available. Once you get local experience, once you know how the country functions and how to network and get into better jobs, you do get into better jobs.
Mm,
But right in the beginning, it's it's basically a compromise on getting the jobs that are available.
right. Thank you, ma'am. Himanshi, there's a question. What are the job opportunities for mechanical engineers after masters other than research and development? Himanshu, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, Shreya, can you just repeat it?
Yeah, sure. What are the job opportunities for mechanical engineers after masters other than research and development?
See, after doing mechanical engineering, students can also look for jobs in surveying, in quantity. Quantity surveying is also one of the program that is available in skill shortage list in New Zealand. And CAD is also one of the options that student can look for instead of going for the research, which is also available in Christchurch Polytechnic Institute of Technology in Christchurch in New Zealand.
Okay. There's another question stating that what are the minimum wages available per hour for part-time work? Himanshi, could you please tell us?
We discussed earlier as well. It's around when a student starts. It could be between 15, 16 New Zealand dollar per hour. But gradually, with the experience they gain in New Zealand, it could come. It could be exceeded till 20, 21 New Zealand dollar per hour.
Right. Okay, that's brilliant. So, can we move to the next slide, which states about friendly government? So, let's talk about how the government is, how are the people of that country? Because if we have to go to a country, we would surely want to know what are the people. It's a very friendly government. They are very hospitable people. New Zealand, as such, does not have only New Zealand people. It has the population which has more or less migrated to New Zealand and made New Zealand as its own home. 1 year study leads you to 1 year PSW, depending, of course, on your level of education. The job contract, it's basically on a contract basis that you get, which is 2 years between the employer and the individual. Uh, we would like to talk a little about the student visa and the regulations. Nidhi, could you please
Yes,
guide us?
absolutely. In terms of, Shreya, what exactly are you asking? The process or how this?
No, the question comes in as that, see, throughout the webinar, we've come across questions on waiving
Hmm.
IELTS, gap years, backup options to Australia that, they take New Zealand because, of course, they're very close. Sydney is just 3 hours from New Zealand, that they think that they
Hmm.
can't get through Australia. Maybe New Zealand could be a back door to it.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
could you
Hmm.
please throw some light on these myths about New Zealand and any other that you have come across in the past?
Yeah, sure. In fact, there are few myths that I'd like to discuss, and Shreya, since I can go on and on, just push me in if I get, a too elongated conversation in. Okay. So the first thing when you said it is as a backup, it is taken, to Australia. The first thing is the
Right.
beauty of New Zealand is that there is no restriction in terms of that you have to do a 2 years masters or you have to do it and then
Hello. I think there was a call drop. Ma'am, would you like to take up this question?
Well, New Zealand at this point of time is the only country that New Zealand and Canada, I think, are the only countries that are offering post-study work options even after a 1 year's qualification. So if a student does not have the time or the resources or the funding to study for 2 years and then look for opportunities, then New Zealand becomes an ideal option. Because if you
yeah.
do a graduate diploma or Nidhi, you're back?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so you can carry on.
See, why I was saying this was because most of the time when we talk to students, the first thing that comes is budget. That's also a major criteria. And sometimes when you look at your pockets, you kind of feel that 2 years becomes a little too much in one stretch. New Zealand is only country which kind of gives you an option wherein you can break down your degree as well or your program. You can do it, you can study, you can work, you can study, you can work, and that you can do twice. And that's the only country which allows you to do that. Doing that, it gives you time to really look at studies as well, so you're not kind of compromising it at all. Plus you're able to manage your budget also. So when you look at Australia, you look at 2 years doing at a stretch, but when you look at New Zealand, you can do, say, if you're going for a 2 years masters, for example, you can do 1 year of post graduate diploma first year, which is equivalent to the first year of masters, and then you get 1 year of job search permit, so you work for a while, and then you get do the second year of masters, and then you again get a job search permit. So you study work, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to manage your finances as well. So that's the first thing which is absolutely beautiful about New Zealand. The second thing is that, I have always heard about it that embassies look at perfect cases, which is an absolutely a myth. Any embassy, if we talk about, and specifically New Zealand embassy as well, they don't look at perfect cases. What they look at is genuine cases. And in that, you have to make sure, because see, everyone's circumstances are different. No life goes on with ideal circumstances. There can be times wherein you have gaps. There were certain family circumstances which didn't allow you to continue with your studies. Something or the other happened. So you probably have a gap of, say, 2 or 3 years. And generally I come across students who say someone's told us that, put in some documents, just forward some documents so that you have perfect cases being shown to the embassy. Don't ever do that. They are not looking at perfect cases, they're looking at genuine cases. And at SIEC we've done some very, very different and difficult cases wherein there have been gaps, there have been circumstances which were not ideal. As long as you explain it in a logical manner and give facts as into what were you doing in those gaps, how did you, what circumstances you were in, and you put it through genuinely, we've never faced a problem in the visa. So no forging of documents, no worrying about why if the gaps are there, whether I can go or not. You're absolutely open to go. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. The third thing is about IELTS. We keep hearing about IELTS, and then that generally happens, that I've seen from people who are not very strong in their English communication skills. Okay. Now, till now, there was a possibility that the institutions were giving uh, uh, an option wherein you can submit a letter of instruction from educational institutions in India, and number two, they were doing an internal test as well. So that used to comply for your IELTS requirement. Coming October, that's changing. So you will have to submit your IELTS requirement. More importantly than that, when you submit an LOI, or when you put in through your internal test, High Commission has a question mark that whether your communication skills are that strong or not, and you can get an interview, and you generally get that. So if you are not good in your communication skills and you're avoiding IELTS because you're not confident whether you can get those scores or not, you're you actually putting yourself in a bad spot. So number one, in terms of embassy requirements, and with the requirements changing in October, IELTS is going to be a thing. Number two, and which is actually more important, if you are not scoring, see, there are 4 modules: listening, reading, speaking, and writing, and they are there because of some reason. Because I'm sure throughout the webinar you've heard what is the teaching methodology, and you have to have those levels in terms of coping up for your studies as well. If you don't have that, the money that you're investing can actually go waste. Why? Because you would not be able to do your assignments, you would not be able to understand the content, you wouldn't be able to really read through and deliver, which means the chances of flunking are there. And when that happens, you're actually putting in more effort in reappearing for the exams and giving more dollars there. So instead of taking short gaps, do better things so that you're able to be a success in New Zealand as well, and you don't waste money.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And the fact that there is no shortcut to success, and if I cannot
Absolutely.
communicate today with my colleagues, with my people around, even when I have to stay somewhere, it is an English speaking country. So if I cannot speak,
Yes.
I will not feel comfortable, I will not feel at home, I would want to come back. So it's
And the
not.
last thing is finances as well, Shreya. I just like to mention that there are a lot of ways wherein you can show genuine finances, because in Punjab there's a lot of stuff happening wherein, specifically when I talk about Punjab and Haryana, wherein people come and say that we will, their finances in the market, and they talk about showing finances. Just, I would request all students just not to touch that, because there are ways of how embassy is able to figure out what you're doing and what not. And there is an FTS scheme which makes showing finances in New Zealand much more easier. So instead of taking a wrong route, ask for alternatives, and there are a lot of alternatives available. It is very easy.
Thank you, Lizzie. Himanshi, there's a question for you. What is the minimum IELTS score required to get into a New Zealand institution? Himanshi, are you there? Anu, can you please take this question?
Yes, Shreya.
Yes, Himanshi, what is the minimum IELTS score required to get into a New Zealand institution?
Right. See, I'll explain it according to the level-based education system in New Zealand. Level 5, 6, 7 basic IELTS requirement is overall 6 with no band less than 5.5 in each. However, in certain private training education providers in level 5 and 6, overall 5.5 is also acceptable. Then when we come to level 8, 9 and above, it's overall 6.5 with no less than 6 in each.
Thank you.
And it also
Himanshi,
depends on program to, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, Shreya?
Go ahead, go ahead.
It also depends on the program that a student is choosing. Like, for example, in teaching education profiles, in which they need to communicate more with the local people in New Zealand, they have high IELTS requirement, which is approximately more than zero point 0.5 or 1 band more than, as I mentioned earlier.
Anu, there's a question from Mr. Vikas, and he wants to know that if they accept distance education through Section 1 universities.
Yes, distance education is definitely acceptable. The only thing that one should keep in mind is that that particular qualification through distance education is also recognized by UGC. That's
Right.
the only thing that you have to keep in mind. Else, it is recognized by all the
Okay, so I hope
institutions.
that answers that question, Vikas. Ma'am, Mrs. Ghai is a concerned mother, and she wants to know the weather conditions in New Zealand.
Okay, since New Zealand has two islands, there is the North Island and the South Island. In the weather conditions, I mean, it does not snow in New Zealand except in Queenstown, which is in the South Island, and you don't have to go there except in the winters. But otherwise, in extreme winter, the minimum temperature goes down to about 2 to 3 degrees, and the maximum in winters would be between 12 to 14 degrees. They have beautiful summers which range between again 15 to 20 degrees. So for an Indian student to become used to the temperature and the climate in New Zealand is very, very easy. Except if you're from Chennai or Bombay. Then the students do feel the cold, but just for I think about one season. And after that you get used to it because everywhere that you go is centrally heated. Your cars are heated, the universities, libraries, cafeterias. So there's not much of hardship that you face despite the cold weather. I hope that answers the question.
So it's pretty much like the Delhi weather in terms of cold.
A little colder, but much more bearable because there's power on all the time.
Okay.
Delhi sometimes has power outages and you are shivering in two or
Hmm,
three degrees.
surely.
But yeah.
So we move on to the next slide, which talks about the expenses. Anu, would you like to run through with the slide of talking of the tuition and the living expense, the weekly living expense, and the accommodation expenses? That is how three categories we've divided the expenses to. And there are a lot of questions. So I think this slide would answer all those questions that what is actually the amount of money required.
Yep, sure. So just to begin with, the tuition expenses, would range from anything between starting from about $15,000 to about $35,000. I'm talking about the most expensive programs also at the master's level. And the living expenses, if you talk about the official living expenses or the money that the Immigration New Zealand actually recommends you to have a nice life there without any hardships, is $15,000 a year. Okay. However, it all depends on your lifestyle and whether you are wanting to stay in an accommodation alone or you're happy to share. So if we talk about, like we mentioned about the weekly expenses, the food can range from about $200, housing 272, health, and so on and so forth. And out of which the accommodation expenses you can really save on by renting accommodation and sharing with about 2 to 3 friends of yours, and that is very easily available. And a lot of universities actually help you to organize that as well. Okay, so what happens typically is that when you're going from here, you can either book a university accommodation. But if you're booking a university accommodation, you have to sign the contract for the entire duration of the of 1 year. And some universities allow you to sign up for 1 semester as well, but that is quite rarely that happens. And otherwise, you can go for a temporary accommodation, which can again be organized by the university, which can be a homestay or which can be a hotel or a motel. They can book for some time, and then you can move out in a private accommodation once you have identified the people you would like to stay with. So, in that case, your cost goes down.
So we can even help you through to understand finances, what all documents if you would come to the office. And we have a complete set of people who deal with all of this, and they're very proficient with their work. And Anubhuti, you even have to give us some information on FTS.
Okay. Now, FTS is Fund Transfer Scheme, which is something which New Zealand government came out with about 3 years back, or rather about 5 years back, I would say. And in the fund transfer scheme, what happens is that if you have money with you and you are not able to show the source of that money, because what we have realized is that even the government has realized it, that in India people would have a lot of money but they may not have money in the accounts. So many times they would have money which is lying in the form of cash, or it could be money in the form of chit funds. It could be money that they have invested with some small companies which are not banks, and hence they are not recognized by the government to to show funds. And then what they have kind of come up with is that the student can collect all that money, put it into the account, and say, hey, this is my money, but I do not have the source of this money. But I am happy to transfer this money into a bank in New Zealand, which is ANZ Bank in New Zealand, and they open an account in your name, which is a student account with a special thing of locking in. So you actually transfer $15,000, which is meant for your living expenses, to this account in New Zealand after your visa is approved. So you just get an approval, then you have to transfer this money, and you can withdraw this money every month. So 15,000 divided by 12 is the money that you can withdraw every month for your living expenses. So it's a locked in amount which you can withdraw every month as you
So it's
require.
basically your money in your name,
Yeah,
just in the New Zealand bank.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Anu.
yeah.
We move on to the next slide, talking about the average salaries. There are a lot of students and who want to know that what is the return on investment and the time of energy, the time that we spend. And it's a very valid question, a lot of questions coming up. So we will come to the average salaries that are there.
Yeah, I think you want me to.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the slide to come up.
Okay.
I believe we can't. I think Anu, yeah, we can actually take that question and you answer it.
Sure. See, the average, yep, the average salaries, if you're talking about, if it is a,
Let's see.
You want me to continue, share?
Yes, yes, please, Anu.
Okay, yeah. So the average salaries would start somewhere around 35 to $40,000 a year, and it can go up to about $55,000 a year as well. So this is what you start as. So it would depend on the area you're working in. I mean, if you're an engineer, it would be a little higher. If it is hospitality, in the beginning, it could be on the lower side. So between 35 and $55,000 annually is the average salary to begin with, and then obviously it increases as and when you start having some work experience there.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And since the living expenses are not very high, it is quite comfortable. I mean, the salary you can actually save, and I have seen a lot of students, they are able to pay off their loans, etc., that they have taken to pursue, their higher education in New Zealand. So it's
Right.
quite handy. Yeah.
Right. So basically, if you categorically divide through the field of study, like for agriculture, forestry, or environment, the median
Yeah.
salary after a bachelor's degree would be around $38,000, which is New Zealand money. And if you calculate it and put it in Indian rupees, it would be around 16 lakhs. And if you've done a master's program, the salary would go up to around 50,000 New Zealand dollars, which comes to around 20 plus lakhs amount of
Yeah.
money in INR. And major sections, of course, health sciences, architecture, engineering. On an average, bachelor's gives you 20 lakhs of Indian rupee, and a master's would give you close to 25 lakh rupees. Is that fair,
Yeah.
Anubhavi?
Yes.
Okay, so coming on to Mr. Joshi, he has himself been international alumni. And would you please share the experience of being an international student, and what is the kind of lifestyle and the lifestyle changes that a student needs to undergo, and the challenges, the problems, and the overall scenario and the mind shift it has to be. A lot of people say that. So, what was your experience, and how do you think the rest of the students have it? Could you just give us a brief about it?
Right. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, it's culturally daunting at times when you start off as an international student, especially if you haven't traveled abroad before. But at the same time, it's culturally enriching as well because you meet students from other nationalities like the Koreans, people you never thought you would meet actually, right? Like Africans, of course, New Zealanders, or whatever your destination of study is, be it any part of the world. And interestingly, a lot of these universities have a lot of exchange programs. So one is an international student scenario, then there are exchange programs where you would have students from Canada, perhaps from America and other Scandinavian countries and so on and so forth. So you just don't, in terms of your learning, become geographically more aware, but you understand the customs, the culture, and the lifestyles of other cultures, be it China, you meet or come across, the first ever Pakistani I met in anywhere in the world, possibly, despite them being my, our neighbors in India, was in Australia because that's where I've studied, right? Other challenges are some academic challenges in the sense that as we've already spoken about the comparatives of both the academic structures, in practical terms, the learning apparatus, the equipment, the knowledge of the professors, the approach they take to their curriculum and how they deliver it is quite different and consistent. Whereas we have this examination system in India, though it's also changed it to a semester system here, but largely most of these Western destinations it's a semester system where you have to attend your classes, then you've got your fortnightly assignments to deal with, and there's a lot of writing research required, a lot of group exercises required while you go along the curriculum, and then you have the exams, which is always a certain ratio of your competency assessment scenario. And a lot of these professors who are your teachers have the independence to design how they'll determine the competency of the student of their particular subject in that sense, right? So gearing up and transiting from this Indian or Asian or wherever we are at, to this Western approach to education is quite different. Having said that, the international offices do provide a lot of support. They have these mentoring programs. They have, your tutors who assist you in, and there are also certain ambassadors that the university appoints to take you through that sort of assistance, right? But the biggest challenge is, especially from the Indian background that we come from, the way the boys and the girls at home are pampered and provided for, and decisions are taken by your parents and all. Whereas in this context, you all of a sudden graduate to become adults way too soon, and you're supposed to take your independent decision for everything. No one's there to tell you or guide you about anything, right? And that's where most of the remarkable learning takes place. And you're pretty independent in terms of there is no tuitioning support as such, but you can always knock the doors or fix appointments with your professors or your teaching assistants of your professors to take help. But this would be largely out of whatever it has been delivered in the class, but you're having was little, you're struggling to decipher the intricacies of that particular algorithm or a certain program, what have you, depending on what you're studying and so on and so forth. The largely the approach is independent, and um, you get exposed to a different cultural environment, and that thing I think is the most uh, amazing kind of learning scale that you go through.
Okay,
Anything else
so
I'm missing out? And I'm happy to answer that as well.
basically it's a transitional phase, and there's
And
a lot of
also, I mean,
handholding
just
that happens.
sorry to cut you in, Shreya, but also the balance in between, your wanting to do some part-time work, your focus on the academics. In our organization view, and most of our senior career advisors always emphasize that you're going there for a course and going there as an international student, where the objective has always been established that you're going there for education, right? So our emphasis is that your prime objective is education, and whereas a lot of students are interested in getting answers for part-time work, how much they can earn, and so on and so forth, right? And my typical answer to all of those kind of inquiries is that, mind you, say for instance, if you're spending $25,000, for 2 years education, meaning $50,000, you could have that as a salary, a starting salary, in the first year itself, provided you're good academically and you picked up by the right organization based on your skills. And so your approach to trying to recover that money should not be immediate, as to say that you're trying to save for your education while you are studying. It should be deferred to a point when you actually start building your career and getting into a job or something like that, rather than focusing while you're studying to earn money. That should be completely a secondary scenario.
Thank you. That was a very important point, Mr. Joshi, that you put forward.
Thank you.
Uh, Nidhi, there's a question by Meera. She wants to know how
Yeah.
can SREC help, and what would be the complete process for any student who's looking for overseas education. There's a slide
Okay.
also which would just explain and visualize the same. Can you please change the
Okay.
slide?
Now, so till the time slide comes in, I'll just answer the question.
Yeah, exactly.
The first thing is that obviously we do end-to-end process, right from the application to visas. But most importantly, and which has been told by our students that this is something that SIEC does really well, is basically matching what the student has done here in terms of qualification, or if he has work experience and everything, and what basically is he looking for as a career, say 5 years or 10 years down the line, and then giving him and finding a program which exactly fits in the requirement. Because ultimately when you're investing so much, you're investing so that your career, you want stability in career, and that comes when the qualification that you're going for meets both these things, your qualification aspirations and the kind of occupation you want to work in once you finish. So that matching is what we put our maximum effort in, and that is, I think that's the key. So that's number one. So first of all, choosing the right program for you. Shreya, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I just thought. So the first thing is choosing the right program for you. Second, just to let everyone know, SIC is one of very few consultants in India who do all 8 universities, almost all polytechniques, and most of the well-known private institutions. So we officially represent all of them. So for us to make a right fit of this for the student in terms of the location he's looking for, budget, program, these three are the major criteria that students look for, and obviously the entry criteria. So according to that, we select institutions for you, and because we've got such wide range of institutions that we represent ourselves, we're able to help a student get the right fit and apply to 3 to 4 institutions as backup, and then finally select one which is the ideal fit in terms of going for his or her higher studies. So matching the program, finding the program, matching the right fit of the institution, application process, or putting in the applications, making sure that the documentation is right. But students should see that if your application doesn't go in the right manner in the first go, it affects in terms of the timelines, of the offer letter. So that helps the student to get offer letters within the required time frame that is there. So applications, getting the offer letters, and the visa process, we've got expert teams, not only at the branch level but at the central level as well, which makes sure that the kind of documentation required by the embassy is told to the student in the first go, and the visa application goes in absolutely right manner. We actually get training from the embassy so that whatever is being imparted to the student, it's exactly what is required. So that's there. So right from the visa process, and then obviously after the visa, whether that's accommodation, whether that's your airport pickup, everything is what end to end we help on. And in fact, when our students go there, they keep in touch with us. We've got an Australian office, but students get in touch with our Australia office if they need any help. They get in touch with us, so we are there forever. In fact, you'd be amazed to see there's so many students who we had sent in 2002 and 3 in New Zealand, and now we're sending their wives and their kids and everyone. So that's happening. So we keep in touch with our students as well. So end to end.
Thank you, Nidhi. That was very beneficial. Uh, we move on to the fact that we are having a global education fair. Can you please change the slide? Yes. The Global Education Fair is happening at various cities across India from 22nd August to 3rd September. Universities from all over the globe would be coming at your doorstep. Kindly register yourself to meet the experts. Feel free to come to all our offices. We are available on the website. All addresses are there. Thank you very much to the panel to give all the information, and to all students, parents, and the institutes who signed in today for the webinar, and
Thank you.
especially those who asked questions. All those whose questions have not been answered, don't worry, we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sure.
Welcome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Shreya, and everyone. Thank you so much.